Have you ever wondered what lies beneath the modern streets of London? I'm not just talking about the tube. I'm talking about a layer of ash and destruction, a scar left behind by one of history's most ferocious warrior queens. This is the story of Boudica and the burning of Londinium. To understand this incredible event, we need to travel back to the 1st century AD. Roman Britain was a tense and volatile place. The Romans had conquered much of the island, but their rule was often brutal and exploitative. In the east, in what is now Norfolk, lived a powerful tribe called the Iceni. Their king Boudica tried to play a smart political game. He was an ally of Rome, and in his will, he left his kingdom jointly to his 2 daughters and the Roman emperor, hoping this would protect his family and his people after his death. But the Romans didn't see it that way. When Boudica died around 60 AD, they saw an opportunity. They ignored the will, seized his lands, and plundered his household. When his widow, Queen Boudica, protested, the Romans inflicted a horrifying punishment. They flogged her publicly and violated her daughters. This was more than an act of greed. It was a profound act of humiliation, designed to break the spirit of the Iceni. But it didn't break Boudica. It forged her into a symbol of vengeance. Imagine the fury, the righteous anger that must have filled her. Boudica was not just a grieving widow and a violated mother. She was a queen who had a sacred duty to her people. She began to rally the Iceni and neighboring tribes, like the Trinovantes, who also suffered under Roman oppression. Ancient historians like Tacitus and Cassius Dio describe her as a towering figure with fierce eyes and long, flowing red hair. She was a charismatic and powerful speaker, her voice filled with a passion that ignited a fire in the hearts of her warriors. She wasn't just calling for a rebellion. She was calling for a war of extermination against the Romans. The timing was perfect for Boudica. The Roman governor, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, was away on a campaign in Anglesey, in modern-day Wales, crushing the last stronghold of the Druids. This left the southeastern part of Britain dangerously exposed. Boudica's rebellion exploded with a ferocity that caught the Romans completely off guard. Their first target was Londinium, today's Colchester. This wasn't just any town. It was the former capital of Roman Britain and a colony for retired Roman soldiers. For the Britons, it was a symbol of their subjugation. The city was poorly defended, with no walls. Boudica's army, a massive, raging horde, descended upon it. The Roman veterans and their families took refuge in the Temple of Claudius, a massive structure built to honor the emperor who had conquered them. They held out for 2 days, but it was hopeless. The rebels stormed the temple, and the city was razed to the ground. Everyone inside was slaughtered. No one was spared: men, women, children. This was not a battle for territory. It was an act of pure revenge. Word of the disaster spread like wildfire. The Roman 9th Legion, commanded by Petilius Cerealis, marched south to try and stop the rebellion. But they were walking into a trap. Boudica's forces, confident and growing in number, ambushed the legion. They annihilated the Roman infantry. Only the commander and his cavalry managed to escape. A whole Roman legion had been wiped out. The message was clear: Boudica was unstoppable. Now, all eyes turned to Londinium. This was not the sprawling metropolis we know today. It was a young, thriving commercial hub, founded by the Romans just a few years earlier. It was a bustling port town filled with merchants, traders, and Roman citizens. It was the heart of Roman commerce in Britain. Suetonius Paulinus, the Roman governor, heard the terrifying news and made a forced march back from Wales. He reached Londinium ahead of Boudica's army. He faced a terrible choice. The city was undefended, with no walls to protect it. His own forces were small, not nearly enough to face Boudica's massive host. Defending Londinium would mean certain destruction for his army, and with it, the end of Roman control in Britain. He made a brutal, pragmatic decision. He had to sacrifice the city to save the province. He abandoned Londinium to its fate, taking with him any who could keep up with his army. Imagine the panic and despair of the citizens left behind. They had been promised Roman protection, but now they were being left to face Boudica's wrath alone. What happened next was a scene of unimaginable horror. Boudica and her army arrived at the defenseless city. Just as they had at Londinium, they unleashed their fury. But this was on a larger scale. Londinium was burned to the ground. Archaeologists today can still find the evidence, a thick red layer of burned debris, about half a meter deep in some places, which they call the Boudican destruction layer. It's filled with charred wood, melted glass, and shattered pottery, the silent witnesses to the city's fiery end. But the destruction wasn't just about fire. The Roman historian Tacitus tells us that the rebels had no interest in taking prisoners or selling slaves. They inflicted terrible tortures on the inhabitants before killing them, a brutal reflection of the humiliation Boudica herself had suffered. It's estimated that between Londinium and the next city they targeted, Verulamium, modern-day street Albans, as many as 70,000 to 80,000 people were killed. It was a massacre on an epic scale, a bloody and total annihilation of Roman life in the southeast. For a brief, terrifying moment, it seemed like Boudica might actually succeed in driving the Romans out of Britain for good. She had destroyed 3 major Roman centers and wiped out a legion. Her army was a tidal wave of destruction. But Suetonius Paulinus was a seasoned general. He had gathered his remaining forces, including the 14th and parts of the 20th legions, creating a disciplined army of about 10,000 men. He knew he couldn't avoid a confrontation forever. He chose his ground carefully, a location with a narrow valley, protecting his flanks and forcing Boudica's much larger army to attack him head-on. The final battle, known as the Battle of Watling Street, was a clash of two worlds. On one side, the disciplined, heavily armed Roman legions, fighting in tight formations. On the other, Boudica's massive Celtic horde, a chaotic but incredibly passionate force. Boudica rode in her chariot with her daughters, giving a final, rousing speech to her warriors, urging them to fight for their freedom. But passion and numbers were no match for Roman military tactics. The Britons charged, but the narrow battlefield funneled them into a killing zone. The Romans held their ground, hurling javelins into the dense crowd before advancing in their classic wedge formation, a human steamroller of shields and swords. The Britons owned supply wagons, which they had placed at the rear to watch the expected victory, blocked their escape route. The battle turned into a slaughter. The Romans showed no mercy, killing not just the warriors but also the women, children, and even the animals. In the end, Roman discipline triumphed over Celtic fury. As for Boudica, her fate is uncertain. Tacitus says she poisoned herself to avoid capture. Cassius Dio claims she died of illness. Either way, the great warrior queen who had brought the Roman Empire to its knees in Britain was gone. The rebellion was crushed. The aftermath was brutal. The Romans unleashed a campaign of punishment, devastating the lands of the rebellious tribes. But in a strange way, Boudica's rebellion had a lasting impact. The sheer violence of it all seems to have shocked even the Romans. A new, more conciliatory governor was sent, and Roman administration in Britain became less exploitative. They had learned a hard lesson. You could only push a people so far. Today, Boudica is remembered as a national hero, a symbol of freedom and defiance. A magnificent statue of her in her chariot stands near the Houses of Parliament in London, right next to the River Thames, not far from the city she once burned to the ground. It is a powerful reminder that beneath the bustling streets of one of the world's greatest cities lies a story of fire, fury, and a queen who would rather die than live as a slave. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most epic tales. Let me know in the comments what you think about Boudica. Was she a hero or a monster? I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you next time.